Hey guys, it's Dave. As promised, I got some bud uglies here. I bought, a big tray, and I've got these few from seed grown plants. Not looking good. We've got some snail damage. We've got some complete blowout on some of these leaves. Some are healthy, some are very unhealthy leaves. Got them for $2 each. So I am going to show you how I deal with ugly plants, which is starting them over. And then I'm going to show you the results of the exact same thing I did earlier in the summer. So I have those growing now. This, I hope, will encourage you to maybe take a chance on a not stunning looking plant if it's something you're really interested in. I'm not talking about a rescue that is pest or disease ridden. I don't bring those into my home. But it may be just that you have some uglies around the house and you are just looking for a nudge to make those look better again. Stick with me. Let's start with a UT039, also known as Flores Island. This is a not terrible looking, but not good looking ugly plant. And the thing about this plant is that it doesn't look particularly good young, which is hardly unique to a Hoya, but this has a beautiful leaf when it matures. It probably doesn't come up on camera how washed out these bottom leaves are. They're not great looking. I'll tell you how I deal with this. I take my trusty bonsai scissors that you know are linked in my description. Do you know that one of the viewers contacted me directly and went to my link and bought a pair of these for Miro and sent them to Serbia? Oh my God, how cool is that? I love that almost as much as anything that's happened this year. All right, how I evaluate a plant. This vine that's hanging on here, I don't care about. So that is sacrificed, it's gone. I do try to leave a little bit of stem above the node. I can't say that I've ever had it die back and rot into a node, or perhaps it did and I just thought the plant failed. I don't know. So I'm just going to make some quick cuts here. I almost always do one node, one leaf, two leaves, whatever's on there. And then I make a decision if there's two leaves and one's in the way, meaning I just can't get it in the substrate properly, I will sacrifice a leaf. If it's really an ugly and weak leaf like this one is, I'll probably just throw that one away. And let me just continue to chop real quick here. Boy, there's a lot of plant here for $2. I'm glad I like this one so much. Even at $2, I don't buy plants that I don't particularly like. This has a very short stem. Question is, can I get it into a container very easily? So that's going to be a good one right there. All you really need for this project are scissors, preferably sharp. I'm going to use a solution of alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, Pure Crop 1, and Dr. Wood's soap. And then I use plant pens. I like these because it's very easy to pull these out of the substrate. You can use bobby pins, you can use wire. I just find it challenging to get a hold of those. And then, of course, my normal substrate, I will be rooting directly into that. So Cocoa Chip, Cocoa Coir, number 3 perlite. Also linked. Last sales pitch of the day. I am going to show you something about trying to save plants that look like garbage down towards the roots. I did an experiment this summer with exactly what I'm doing here, cutting up the best parts of the plant, throwing away the worst parts. And in one case, I did keep some very ugly leaves, just to see what would happen if I repotted them, and nothing improved, I'll tell you that. And for this, these are all garbage leaves. So I'm not going to waste my time with those. I will. These are all going to go in the same prop box together, but I'll just quickly wash these, and I would imagine edit out the boring part of this. I know we all have those ugly plants that we just sort of ignore or wish they looked better. Mine was the chicken farm. I had 2 pots of it. I've had it for so long. I don't even remember why I separated them, if I separated them. Just hard to keep happy, never looking good. It's finally putting on some decent growth, but not like great. Then it's putting in long internodal spacing, even though it's getting fantastic light. And I know a lot of people struggle with keeping that plant looking like really good, but I started that over, so it certainly got me thinking about the uglies. And then when I had the opportunity to buy these plants for, you know, end of the year Hoya sale for a couple dollars, well, I have them now. But it is fun to have the plants that I have already done this. It's my favorite video to watch when someone can say, we're going to do this, we're going to take some ugly plants, and then be able to flash forward in some way. And to have them be identical plants, same seller, same everything, same grower, me, is pretty cool. I think, anyway. I always am frustrated by a video that's like, that's just a leaf. Check back in 6 months and we'll see how this went. We can do that today. Just filling it up and finding one that's gonna fit in there nicely. That's a little too tall, so my instinct on this one was probably right. With a substrate this loose, these don't do a lot until you have watered in the substrate. It'll just kind of want to pull out if the plant is fighting you. This one wants to sit in there like a good boy or girl, so I appreciate that. And I want to comment on something I get asked about somewhat frequently, and that is, do you need to bury the node on a Hoya? And I do see, not frequently, but sometimes on the sites that you have to, because that's where the root growth is going to come from. And that's verifiably false on a Hoya. These are not aeroids. They will root, potentially anyway, from anywhere on the stem. And that's how I do it. I do put the node like I am here. Can you see that, or no? I'm going to get these down to the substrate because I can easily, and more roots are better. I mean, but if it was just impossible because I was trying to save a leaf, or sometimes it's just too awkward with a very large leaf to get it into a small container, I just do the stem. And I have done this not dozens of times, but hundreds of times. And it's, you know, I did a video called Propping the Hoya or something like that with a 99.999% success rate. I don't think you can guarantee 100% success in anything. It's an aspiration, but sometimes it's 100%. Usually it's 100%. But I didn't want to be immodest or promise more than I thought most people could deliver, including me. I'll just finish these up, and maybe sometimes, you know, when I'm thinking of the future, like next year when I'm going to sell these, if it's a really beautiful plant that's going to grow well and already has additional growth points, I'll probably just put one in. Sometimes when I've just got, you know, a little guy like this, I'll put 2 in the pot, you know, just like that. And I love doing this kind of work. This is the sort of busy work, not busy work, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's satisfying to do this kind of work. And I find it very satisfying to take something that just does not look good in my collection, cutting it up, starting it over again, and so often I have been rewarded with a much better looking plant. for doing that. So you have one that's growing slow or growing weird, or it's got that long internodal spacing in between leaves. Man, give it a chop. And the nice thing with Hoya, these nodes, unlike an aroid, don't get spent. In theory, they have sort of an infinite lifespan. I've never put a node to the test, but I have certainly seen a node put out many new leaves and growth points. This one's gonna be a bit of a fighter, I can tell. There we go. So this is just laying on top. I did absolutely nothing with this one. So this is one of those cases where I would consider taking this leaf off, even though it's the best one, if I can't get it in here well. I don't want to do that though. 2 leaves are better than 1 whenever possible. And that will work just fine once I water it in. You saw me put the rooting compound powder on these. I have mentioned before that I did some tests last year. There's, with this specific root compound, no difference at all in rooting, none at all. So I do it to sort of cauterize the new cut. I will water these in right away. I want to be careful to say I'm not suggesting that's a good idea or bad idea, or certainly that you should do it. I do it. I do it all the time. It's just routine for me to, like today is a time crunch. My wife will be home and she thinks she's entitled to use our shared computer this afternoon. You see what I deal with? But as I was saying, I use that just to kind of sterilize the end of the cutting. I know some people really swear by it, including a friend of mine who's a phenomenal grower, but I don't know. I think she would be a phenomenal grower without the root powder. A question I have gotten asked fairly frequently is if I soak an entire pot when I put in new cocoa coir, because I do use terracotta quite frequently. I only use terracotta on mature plants, never anything with a delicate root system. Yeah, sometimes I do that just throughout the course of watering plants. If they're in a very hot window that are drying out very quickly, I will put those in a bowl and soak the whole thing, or just put a plastic sleeve on it. You know, just if it's a 4-inch pot, I might put in a guacamole container around it, and that really helps it stay moist. For these, I soak them, and then I keep an eye on them for the first couple of waterings, because it seems to me, I don't think it's a figment of my imagination, that they dry out more quickly when it's the brand new mix. Even though this mix was originally soaked, it's dry now. That's been my experience. That's what I do. And then from then on, it just seems to maintain a normal watering schedule. This kind of sad little tyke here is an RHM 009. So that's from Rick and Swiffer's Hoyas, Rick Marrera out of Florida. Think the world of him and his plants, his growing techniques, his online persona. It's just wonderful, a lot of positivity. You know, I was asked, and I talked about this in the last video I did too. Somebody asked if I would do a video on rescuing cuttings that have been ordered and they show up with poor root systems. And my advice was, I said no, because it'd be a very short video, because I would say start the plant over again. Plants will hang on to a pathetic root system for a long, long time. Even though, when I say plants, I mean specifically Hoya. Even though this is capable of growing brand new roots that are robust and would help grow this plant healthily, is the whole video going to be like this? It might be. For some reason, if it's holding on to these sad little things right here, at least in my experience, it's not inclined to put on a better root system. Like, this good enough for me. I like looking like this. I don't care if I grow or not. So that would have been the whole video, is just to take those roots off and start over. I don't know how he felt about that, but that is good advice in my book. And I'm not the only one giving that kind of advice. Some things I say, I feel like I'm I might be the only one. I'm just checking this stem to see if it's healthy, because it looks a little weird right here, like it had rotted out a little bit, or I'm not sure, but it does look healthy. So I'm gonna take it at its word and pot this up in something a little wider, so that I'm going to put it in at this angle, something like that, and it should be just fine. And let me grab the one that I bought earlier this summer and did this with, so you can get an idea how well something this pathetic can grow. And again, you might have something like this in your collection that you're just waiting for it to do better. Unless I really don't care about the plant anymore, like the chicken farm, where I've just been ignoring it. You know, there's a point, I don't know how long it is, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, where I am going to do something. If the plant isn't doing it, I'm going to change something, because I don't have, how many years left on this planet do I have? Am I going to wait for a year or two to find out if this is going to grow? No, I am not. There we go, RHM009. Something I have learned through trial and error, I mean, is when I'm putting substrate in these little containers, for some reason I am occasionally reluctant, or I'm not paying attention enough to put in the chunkier mix, and I end up with just a ton of straight cocoa coir, either down at the bottom or throughout the entire thing. Then I'll have a plant that is just sitting and doing nothing. And that's an example of, if the plant is just not growing or it's not giving me anything, I'm going to change something. And the first thing I might look at is, what does it look like beneath the soil line? And so often I have found that the roots are just compacted against that cement-like cocoa coir, because it will just filter down the water until it's packed so tightly that these delicate Hoya roots won't cut through it. At least that's been my experience, and I mean like over and over and over again. It's a mistake I've made so many times, and I will pick up handfuls of cocoa coir and kind of pour it in, and that's how it happens. So I need to be careful when I do that. So definite pro tip. You know, originally I always thought that these can't root into something that's so chunky. It needs to be hugged and loved by cocoa coir or peat, whatever you're using, and that just isn't true. This is the RHM009 that I repotted this summer. So it was a few weeks ago. I think it was in my Chores Out the Wazoo video. Not one you're going to see around a whole lot. Probably one next year I'll be trying to convince you to add to your collection. I'll just show you this one because I bought it for funsies. It actually looks great except the base of the plant. So this, I'm sure, is going to be in the thumbnail because that's ugly. I'm sorry, but that's just ugly. But the rest of the plant, look at that. Really nice, right? I'm going to cut this just right down at the base here, just because I know I'm not going to save any of that. And then I'll evaluate how many nodes I want to do on something like this. And the internodal spacing here is quite close. So I can see myself maybe doing 2 nodes, cutting leaves off. I'll just see how it looks. I'll probably, well, we can just do it together. Sure. I would say something like that. That's a lot of leaves, but I'm confident that this is going to root very quickly and be able to support those small leaves. So, you know, trial and error on that. I wouldn't leave like 3 or 4 nodes of large leaves on a stem. Probably they're not going to make it. Probably easier just to cut off lower leaves and stick it further down into the substrate from our roots. So we'll see what I do there. Let me cut this up real quick and then I'll rejoin you. All right, I've got them all cut up. I cut off the aerial roots, which can happen on a lot of plants that are grown in high humidity. Kind of nothing more obvious than my Hoya obscura, just like spaghetti strings hanging off. No harm to the plant. But this is a Croniana grown from seed with unknown. So really pretty large leaves. It's going to be a really pretty plant. And for $2, why wouldn't I grow a really nice looking plant that's going to bloom young and smell absolutely fantastic? I'll touch on one more, and I do want to show you a few examples of the uglies that I've been growing up from this summer. And I will tell you that some of the best looking plants you've seen on my channel started out as these uglies, and good idea, I'll grab one of those from last year. Look at this beauty. The snails have made a meal of this. My friend deals with snails where she lives, not that far from me, and we don't have any snail problems here at all. This is the EPC 997, formerly called an acuta. It's been reclassified as verticillata. A lot of you bought one of these from me this year. These leaves get huge. They get very large, deep green, speckled with kind of a twilight silver that can turn pink. Some of these are very, very splashy. These seedlings weren't, the ones I've been buying. I think they're beautiful. I love to buy a plant like this where it's, you know, pretty maybe to here or so, and just have some nice big leaves to prop from. I already know how well this plant grows because I started growing it last year. And I sold them all. Never sell the goose, only sell the eggs. And I accidentally sold my last one to you guys, so whoops. But I'll have more, and I will just trim these. Doesn't need to be very long. Those look good. And so this one, this would be dealer's choice for you. Since there is a node here and there's a node here, you can decide if you want to keep this as a 2-leaf cutting or a 1-leaf. I personally, I'll just make it 2, like that. And you have plenty of stem to get that going. And then let's evaluate some of this. I will not try to keep the bottom leaves. The root system is terrible. It's pulling right out of there. What I'm going to do is cut off that snail leaf. It's putting on this little deformed leaf on that growth point. I will heartlessly cut off that little vine, and it will inspire this future little plant to put off another one that's healthier. That's how I do it, and it's been really effective for me. I'll do that with a plant that's dormant. So when I say I need to change something, if a plant isn't growing or if it's not doing something, that doesn't automatically mean a repot. You know, I can sort of evaluate a substrate by sticking in like a moisture meter or something, and if it's really packed down, it'll be obvious as I go through some of the coarser parts of the mix and then get down, and you know, it's kind of like that. I'll know there's a problem there. Trimming a vine on a Hoya can often kick it into gear, like, hey, you need to do something, like soon, or join your friends in the compost. I'm just kidding, I wouldn't do that. I'm just kidding, I really would do that. Okay, this could get exciting. I'm gonna tip this toward you. This is a tray I did yesterday without y'all. And when I say they were uglies, believe me, but cut down like this, I have got some fantastic plants in here. Hanahi, melliflua, species 33, 1054, all kinds of good stuff. more of the EPC 997 there. So, oh, and then the Benetitanii. I'll show you some of those right now. And this is the stuff that I did earlier this summer. Here are just a couple of my Benetitanii that I did earlier this summer. Again, bud uglies, and look how beautiful they are now. Growing beautifully, putting on new growth. Took a little while to settle in, but very happy with how these are doing. Got a whole bunch of them. I just picked 2 literally randomly, just right off the shelf. So these are exactly how all the other ones look too. Really happy with those. This one is the Hanahi, and regulars on the channel will know I am all about this plant. It's a real beauty. It is a standout in my whole collection. Y'all haven't caught up with me yet. That's all I'm saying. Few of you out there have. You will. You'll come around. Now, let me show you 2 more examples of this. This was my experiment to see if trying to save a plant with crappy roots and crappy leaves would be worth my time. The answer is hell no. Look at this. Hasn't grown at all, hasn't done anything, looks absolutely miserable. So these were obviously completely photo bleached, which is different than growing in highlight conditions where there's less chlorophyll in the leaves, but it will come back. Those of you who saw my elephant, for instance, I got it looking much like this. I grow it in much, much, much lower light. The leaves have gotten very deep green. This one's never gonna go back to green. And then let's look at my Hanahi that I got last year from the very same seed racks that I got all these other plants from. So I grew this one up. It was quite a lot larger. I let it grow way over the light, and so I had to cut it back because it started putting up long runners. My fault completely. But as you can see, you can take some uglies and turn them into an absolutely gorgeous plant. And you know, at least in my book, this is a gorgeous Hoya. I'm all about this plant. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful plant. Easy to grow as long as you are a little bit careful not to overwater it, because then you'll be starting it over whether you want to or not. I've had fun with this one. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, leave a comment for me. I'll do my best to answer it, and then I'll see you again in the next one real soon, okay? Bye-bye.